No, Hare Krishna. You can hear Monica Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, yes, I can hear you, but when Maharajji was speaking, I could not hear. So I'm not sure if it was muted or...
Hare Krishna, can you hear me now?
Yes, Maharajji, Hare Krishna, I can hear you now. Thank you. Hare Krishna again. So I think the voice comes and then it goes again out. I'm not sure if it's on my end or other devotees can chime on that as well.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
clear. Is it still breaking?
No, it's not breaking. It's very clear.
Okay.
I cannot hear the speaker.
The speaker is not yet started. Maharaj will start. Just hang on. Waiting. It's 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock is when we're supposed to start. So just hang on.
Thank you.
Hari Hari. Gaura Hari. Looks like 1 o'clock. Let's begin.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Wishing you all a very happy Gaura Purnima. We're honored today to have His Holiness Ramapad Swami with us. He'll be talking about Lord Chaitanya's loving exchanges with his beloved devotees. And if anybody has any questions, you'll be able to unmute yourself towards the end of the class and ask your question directly. And for those of you who don't know Maharaj, Maharaj is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He's been practicing Krishna consciousness for over 50 years now. He's an initiating spiritual master. He does many wonderful services, community building and college preaching, and travels all over the world and speaks at corporate places and universities and so on. So we're very happy and fortunate to have Maharaj with us. Thank you, Maharaj.
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Paschat Nitya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Gaura Purnima. I was just reminded I was with you all in Gaura Purnima last year, but we were in the temple. Now we're virtual, but it's still Gaura Purnima. And the topic that was suggested or assigned is very wonderful, very broad. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's loving exchanges with his devotees. So we could speak for days on that topic. I think I'll just begin by reminding us of part of the mystery of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is he's Krishna himself in the mood of Srimati Radharani. So a devotee of himself in the mood of Radharani. And according to Caitanya Charitamrita, he has loving associates in all the different rasas. In parental rasa, in friendship, in servitorship, and in conjugal love. So try to understand that. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has loving relationships that are transcendental, beyond the bodily conception of life, where the rasa, although his form is that of a male devotee, he's the Supreme Lord, and he has associates who are from all the rasas, including conjugal rasa. We're going to be spending some time discussing his loving relationship with Jagadananda Pandit, and according to Caitanya Charitamrita, among those who have a conjugal relation with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are Gadadhar Pandit and Jagadananda and Gadadhar Das and many others. The way in which so loving relationship with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the way that Jagadananda saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was as Krishna himself, and he saw Gadadhar Pandit as Radha herself. And at the same time, Jagadananda, all the great acharyas saw Jagadananda as non-different, literally non-different than Satyabhama in Dwarka. Now we know Satyabhama in Dwarka, in contrast to Rukmini in Dwarka, was a contrarian. The word that's used in Caitanya Charitamrita is Vamya. Vamya is used by our Gaudiya acharyas to describe Lalita and the left wing gopis. The left wing gopis were Vamya. That is, they would be very argumentative in their talks with Krishna. They would challenge, they would speak, really heavy things to Krishna. Volatile. Vamya. That's Jagadananda's mood, but we should, as we go forward, please understand it's loving ecstasy. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu loved that exchange of loving ecstasy that it's hard for us to understand how someone who talks back, it's an exchange of loving ecstasy. But that's our Krishna, and that's our Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and in particular, his relationship with Jagadananda. According to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Jagadananda is an eternal associate of Krishna, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, starting from Navadvip until his conclusion in Jagannath Puri. We often hear in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Lord Nityananda was his constant companion. Well, even more constant was Jagadananda, because even before Lord Nityananda came to Navadvip, Jagadananda was engaged in loving exchanges with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We find some information about this in Chaitanya Bhagavat, and we find, for example, in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Jagadananda was with Lord Chaitanya during this episode with Chankasi. He was with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the deliverance of Jagai and Madhai. He was with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when Chaitanya sang Kirtan pastimes at the house of Srivas. Jagadananda was with Lord Chaitanya even in their childhood. Let's hear some childhood, very nice childhood pastime. This is being described by Jagadananda Pandit himself. Jagadananda said we would quarrel every day. Bamya. There would always be something. And one particular day, the quarrel was a really big quarrel. So Jagadananda was really hurt. And so he went by the side of the Ganges, and all night he cried until the beginning of the morning. Gadadhar Pandit, who was Radharani and dear associate classmate of all three, Gadadhar Pandit went to the home of Nimai Pandit, Lord Chaitanya, and said what had happened. Jagadananda is pouting. So they went before even the sun had fully come up. Both of them found Jagadananda crying and crying as he had been doing all night long. And Nimai said, Jaga, stop your stubbornness. Come home with us. Let us have a meal. And Jagadananda writes, because the Lord was giving his order, I could not refuse. So I clutched the feet of Gadadhar, because Gadadhar had Lord Chaitanya said, Gadadhar came to my home and he told me what you're up to, and so we've come here immediately. Jagadananda said, it's still dark at night and the road is filled with sharp stones and you must have hurt your feet. You're going to so much trouble for me? Yes, I'm going to so much trouble. I can't bear that you're suffering like this and you're fasting. Please understand, I also, after our quarrel, have been fasting. Let us go together and take some of Mother Sachi's cooking. So Jagadananda clutched Gadadhar's feet, having brought Chaitanya Mahaprabhu there. They went to Mother Sachi's home. She gave a little prasad, and he took rest. Then after some rest, they had some nice breakfast. They went to class together, all three, Jagadananda, Gadadhar, and Nimai Pandit, to attend school, because they're school-age boys. And after that, they went to Jagadananda's home, and they had a nice meal together. And Nimai said, it's so wonderful. Whenever we quarrel, which is almost every day, our relationship becomes even sweeter and more loving every time we quarrel. That's a grain of rice in the rice pot. They would behave like that together. There's another very nice description, again found in Prema Vivarta, a book written by Jagadananda, where he said, I like to write, this is later in Puri, Swarup Damodar asked me, Jaga, what are you writing? I said, I write whatever I like. And my heart is absorbed in Caitanya, Mahaprabhu, and so I just like to write about him. Oh, how nice. Write about the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the whole world will benefit. And I replied, I don't know what will benefit the whole world. I only write what's in my mind. And Swarup Damodar, understanding that I'm a little eccentric, he left me alone. And I sit in meditation, and whatever is in my mind, I write for my pleasure. So shortly after saying that, he described a pastime in their childhood. One day, Jagadananda says, or writes, I was playing very intensely, and we saw, Gadadhar and I saw Nimai entering into a dark forested area near Alakananda River, one of the tributaries of the Ganga, deep into the forest. So we followed him. And as Nimai was going into the forest, he saw a parrot. And he grabbed the parrot and said to the parrot, let me read, it's really, really nice. It's hard to repeat also. The Lord said to the parrot, you are Vyasadev's son. So you should sing the glories of Sri Krishna and Radha and increase our bliss. But the parent ignored his words and just said, Gaura Hari, Gaura Hari. The Lord became angry and threw the parrot away. But the parrot kept singing, Gaura, Gaura, and began to dance. We, Gadadhar Pandit and Jagadananda, immediately felt the stirrings of ecstatic emotion hearing the parrot's wonderful song. The Lord again said, oh, parrot, this is Vrindavan. Sing loudly the divine names of Radha and Krishna so that everyone can hear. The parrot responded, Vrindavan has now been transformed into Navadvip, and I see Radha and Krishna in the form of Gaura Hari. I'm a parrot living in this forest, simply surviving on the chanting of the holy name of Gaura. You are my Krishna, and Gadadhar here is my Radharani. Jagadananda writes, I offer my prostrated obeisances at the feet of anyone who remembers the ambrosial pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He doesn't follow chronology or logic or anything. Jagadananda is a spontaneous devotee. He has as dearmost associate Lord Chaitanya and Gadadhar, who he sees to be Radha and Krishna. He says to Gadadhar, Mahaprabhu gave Tota Gopinath to worship, and to me, he gave Lord Krishna Krishna. Yeah. Giridhari. Govardhan Hill to worship. And Swarup Damodar is my life and soul because he is non-different than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And I offer my prostrated obeisances forever to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and nothing else. This is his heart. Because we're speaking about the loving relationships. So loving relationships is a two-way. But from Jagadananda's point of view, something that I really like in this book, I'll read it twice. It's very important and very eloquently written. I, Jagadananda, humbly caution that if we do not develop single-mindedness in executing devotional service, then we place ourselves in the impossible task of trying to cross a river with 2 boats with 1 foot in each. It's a nice meditation. I'll read it again. I, Jagadananda, humbly caution that if we do not develop single-mindedness in executing devotional service, then we place ourselves in the impossible task of trying to cross a river with 2 boats with 1 foot in each. Jagadananda was certainly single-minded in his loving relationship with Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and his moods as a spontaneous devotee's moods will swing this way and swing that way, and he glorifies Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and then he calls him a cheater. He calls him a cheater. Here's an example. One day, the Lord said jokingly to me, "You have been the chief queen of Dwarka for a long time, Satyabhama, and I am just a poor beggar. Why do you serve me? You can get so many hundreds of renunciants like myself to serve." Jagadananda says, I replied, "Give up your pretension and deceit. Why don't you say that I'm simply a maid servant at the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani? You have stolen the luster of my dear mistress Radharani. Hence you are a thief, and I shall catch you and return you back to the land of Braja. My only desire is to serve Srimati Radharani, but you want to send me far away to Dwarka. This is all your mischievous pastimes. Your activities as a renowned sannyasi are only too well known to me. In fact, you just want to deceive and deprive us, while you serve the lotus feet of Radharani all by yourself." Now, who talks like that to somebody else? But that's how Jagadananda engaged in conversation with Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And sometimes, and his moods go this way, and his moods go that way, and he doesn't consider how outsiders will think of him. He's just this mood of spontaneous love, completely absorbed in attachment to Krishna, in the mood of Satyabhama, although he's considering Radharani as his dearmost. So it's because it's Caitanya, it's very profound. He's in this Vamya mood that is contrary and argumentative and volatile, like the gopis were, as Satyabhama also was, regularly making arguments and quarrels with Krishna in Dwarka. And Krishna knew that, and Krishna loved it. And he would talk back to her, and she would talk back to him, but not like a spousal dispute between husband and wife. Just a genuine, ecstatic, loving exchange. Only because Caitanya Mahaprabhu was in the mood of Vrindavan, Jagadananda assumed the mood of one of Radharani's associates, who was speaking to Krishna in the way that the gopis would sometimes speak to Krishna. Very mysterious. Jagadananda was present with Caitanya Mahaprabhu during his after sannyas. Lord Chaitanya took 4 people along with him, following the order of Mother Sachi, to go to Navadvip, go to Puri from Shantipur. Those 4 people were Lord Nityananda, Jagadananda, Damodar Pandit, And the fourth one was Krishna Krishna. One other person were with them. Jagadananda had the service, two main services. He would cook, and he was carrying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's danda. He took the position always of the menial servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It describes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, one of his services, Jagadananda, was he would go here and there when they would come to a place where it was time for a meal. He would go and do madhukari, meaning going from door to door to accept alms from people. Then he would cook and he would offer to the Lord, and it was the prasad that everyone honored. So one particular day, Lord Chaitanya, just when they crossed the border from Bengal into Orissa, Lord Chaitanya said, you stay here at this temple, I'll go and gather alms. And he gathered a lot of alms, and he gave them to Jagadananda, who cooked and offered the prasad to everybody. Following that pastime, another particular episode with Jagadananda was he was carrying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's danda as they were traveling, walking all the way from Bengal to Jagannath Puri. They stopped at one place where Lord Chaitanya wanted to go see some deities on the other side of a river, and Jagadananda took the opportunity to give the danda he was carrying to go get alms while Lord Chaitanya was gone. Lord Nityananda, in a celebrated mood of being angry with the danda, because like Jagadananda, Lord Nityananda saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, their relationship, loving relationship, was they saw him as the Supreme Lord, and they didn't like that he underwent austerities. So Nityananda had a conversation with the danda. It wasn't a two-way conversation. He was scolding the danda. Who do you think you are, causing my Lord to carry you as if he needs to undergo austerities? And he broke the danda in 3 places and threw it away. Now there's different versions, but according to Chaitanya Bhagavat, when Lord Chaitanya came back, Jagadananda showed him the broken danda. There's another version. He asked Lord Nityananda, where's my danda? He said, oh, you were in a swoon of ecstasy and you fell and broke the danda. So if I should be punished, then whatever you want to punish. And in either case, there's 2 different versions. Lord Chaitanya then, on the pretext of being alone, he went ahead, entered the Jagannath temple. He fell in a swoon of ecstasy before Lord Jagannath, was taken to the home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and then later, these same devotees that were accompanying Lord Chaitanya awoke him from his trance of ecstasy by loud chanting of the holy name. Now, there are many cases throughout the whole of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time in Jagannath Puri where Jagadananda's name is mentioned, being involved in kirtan, a nice singer, fantastic dancer. Jagadananda was the one who was, when people would come to Puri, Jagadananda was the hospitality person. He took care of their necessities and cooked for them and saw to all of their comforts, along with others, of course. But he was intimately engaged in service to Lord Chaitanya. This continued after the Lord Chaitanya left from Puri to go on the South India tour. When he came back 2 years later, Jagadananda was one of the first to be where Lord Chaitanya was at Alalanath to receive him, and came together with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Jagannath Puri. And the personal servant that was traveling with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his South India tour, he, that is Jagadananda and Nityananda and some of the others, arranged for his personal servant to go to Navadvip and inform all the residents of Navadvip that Lord Chaitanya had returned. He's intimately involved, in other words, in all the different aspects of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So the devotees came, and for 3 years they came and spent time with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At the end of the third visit, Lord Chaitanya told Nityananda, don't come back with all the devotees going into the future. You should hire some associates and go with you to distribute the holy name throughout the whole of Bengal. That very same year, Lord Chaitanya instead sent Jagadananda to go to Navadvip and give a message to Mother Sachi. Tell Mother Sachi, listen carefully, Jagadananda is the message carrier. Tell Mother Sachi that she doesn't know whether she's dreaming or it's real, that when she makes offerings for me every day, I come and I eat. He gave some details of a particular event that only Mother Sachi would know, but Lord Chaitanya knew. And she was beside herself with, did I not even cook? No, there's something in the stove, but I cooked, but did I make the offering? And she was bewildered. So tell Mother Sachi that I personally come and eat her offerings. It's not her imagination. Her love for me is so strong, I personally come. Deliver this message. And when Jagadananda delivered that message, Mother Sachi, who can imagine how she felt? My beloved son, dear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and eats every time I offer. So she was in ecstasy. The residents of Navadvip were in ecstasy because Jagadananda was bringing message of his pastimes and his activities and their loving dealings. And the devotees were floating in an ocean of happiness, hearing from this loving associate of Lord Chaitanya, Jagadananda. Before Jagadananda, this is a very important pastime of loving exchange. Before Jagadananda returned, he visited Shivananda Sain's residence. And Shivananda Sain, at Jagadananda's request, provided him with a clay vessel, a clay pot, filled with very, very fine sandalwood oil, which Jagadananda personally, with great care and affection, carried back to Puri by hand, gave it to Govinda, and said, this is for our Lord. Tell him that if he rubs some on his head, then his bile and air circulation will improve. It's medicinal. Please give it to him. So, in their loving dealings, Jagadananda, like Satyabhama would do for Krishna, want to see all comforts and everything for Lord Chaitanya. He didn't like that he would undergo austerities like a sannyasi. So Govinda was between a rock and a hard place. He knew that Lord Chaitanya would reject, scented oil. Sandalwood is a very fragrant oil. But what to do? Because Jagadananda would pout if he didn't take it. So Lord Chaitanya's immediate response was, this is not meant for a sannyasi. Some fragrant oils. People will make fun of me. It's not how a sannyasi keeps himself. But so his effort doesn't go to waste. You can be used in the lamps of the altar, around the altar at the Jagannath temple. So Govinda didn't take it to the Jagannath temple, and each day Jagadananda was asking Govinda, did he use it? And finally, at the end of the third day, on the fourth day, Jagadananda personally came and asked Lord Chaitanya, that pot of oil, have you used it? And Lord Chaitanya spoke the following words. It's really strong. I want to read. Excuse me, it was after 10 days. Lord Chaitanya said to Govinda, why don't we hire a masseur to give me a massage? Are these the pleasures for which I have taken the renounced order? You will all be very amused to see my downfall. As I walk along the road, people will get a whiff of my perfumes and say, there goes a womanizer monk. And Govinda didn't want to relay that to Jagadananda. So Jagadananda came and asked him again. And Lord Chaitanya said, a sannyasi shouldn't use fragrant oils. The best thing is to offer it to Jagannath for his service. So Jagadananda got volatile and very argumentative and said, who told you I brought this oil all the way from Gauda? It's a lie. The pot was outside Lord Chaitanya's room. He picked the pot up, threw it to the ground, smashed it into little pieces, went pouting to his room and locked the door from the inside. And for 3 days, he didn't come out. He didn't eat. He didn't bathe. He was pouting. Word went to Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is controlled by the love of his devotees. So he went to Jagadananda's door. Knock, knock, knock. Oh, Jagadananda. Oh, Jagadananda. I've been fasting for 3 days. I'm very hungry. I'd like you to cook for me. I'm going to now to do my midday duties, and you prepare a nice meal, and when I come back, I'll take prasad at your home. So Jagadananda couldn't refuse. He got up, took his bath, began cooking. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu allowed him to wash his feet, which was never done by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gave him nice garlands and everything. And Lord Chaitanya ate sumptuously. He ate 10 times more than he would normally eat because he was afraid to say, no, that's enough, because Jagadananda might be upset. Controlled by the love of his devotee. This is the loving relationship between these two. He finally said, that's enough. I can't eat anymore. And now I want to see you eat. Because when Lord Chaitanya sat down, he said, bring another plate and fill it up, and you sit and have a meal with me. And Jagadananda said, I'll eat after you eat. Lord Chaitanya raised his hands in the air and said, I'm not eating until you eat. Sit down. But Jagadananda said, I have to serve you. And besides that, I have the 2 persons assisting me, Ramai and Raghunath Bhatta, and I have to serve them. I'll take after they take. So Lord Chaitanya ate, and then finally, I've eaten enough. So now I want to see you eat. I'll eat after they eat. He didn't. Lord Chaitanya said, Govinda, that was his servant, you stay here and make sure he eats. And after Lord Chaitanya left, Jagadananda said, go massage his feet. I promise you I'll eat. So he served those, and message was given to Lord Chaitanya, so he finally could take rest, that Jagadananda had broken his fast, his 3-day fast. In this way, in exchange, how can we understand? So in addition to the oil, then the next was a bed, because as Lord Chaitanya was increasing in his detachment and renunciation, he began sleeping on a hard stone floor. And Jagadananda and the others were also in an anxiety. He could just hurt his body. So he made a very special little bed, a certain kind of cloth, and took cotton from a cotton tree and manually stuffed it in, and a pillow, and gave it to Govinda. Said, please give this to Chaitanya from me, and I want Swarup Damodar, please convince him to use it. So Lord Chaitanya refused. I'm a sannyasi. I sleep on the floor. I can't sleep on a bed. People, this is not the life of a sannyas. So Swarup Damodar, another relationship, loving relationship. Swarup Damodar figured out a way, a certain bark from a certain kind of tree, and stitched it together and made a little mat instead of just the bare floor, which Lord Chaitanya accepted. And everybody was happy except Jagadananda, because he wasn't sleeping in his little bed or little mattress. So in that pouting mood, Jagadananda, after some time, he wouldn't talk to Lord Chaitanya for 3 days. After some time, he came and said, I want to go to Vrindavan. And Lord Chaitanya said, you can't go to Vrindavan in an angry mood. You'll make offense. That's not, not the right condition to go to Vrindavan. No, I've been wanting to go to Vrindavan for a long time, but you didn't give your permission. So I couldn't go. So Lord Chaitanya didn't give permission, and Jagadananda tried multiple times. Still Lord Chaitanya wouldn't give his permission. Finally, Jagadananda worked through Swarup Damodar. Please convince him I should go. So Swarup Damodar came, and this is, again, relationships, loving relationships. I think it would be good for him to go. He was really determined to go. And he can be in the care of Sanatana Goswami, so he won't get himself into difficulty. So Lord Chaitanya, hearing the words of his beloved Swarup Damodar, accepted. Then he called Jagadananda. I'm going to read. He gave him very detailed advice. That's good advice for us too. The road to Varanasi is free of all problems. After Varanasi, however, the road is full of robbers. So be careful. You should take some soldiers with you for your protection. If the highwaymen see a single Bengali on the road, they will be sure to attack and loot him. When you get to Mathura, go first and see Sanatana. Offer your respects to the Chobe Brahmins of Mathura, but don't associate with them. You will not be able to understand their behavior, so respect them at a distance. Do the Braj Parikrama with Sanatana. Do not leave his side for even a moment. Don't climb Govardhan to see Gopal. Don't stay in Braja for a long time. Hurry back. So with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's permission, in part to pacify his pouting heart, he went off to Vrindavan in the manner that Lord Chaitanya described. And he stayed with Sanatan, although he had a slightly separate residence. At one time he invited Sanatan Goswami to come, and he would not prepare a nice meal, because Sanatan Goswami was renunciate, but he really appreciated the very quality cooking of Jagadananda. And when he came, Sanatana Goswami was wearing a red cloth around his head like a turban. And immediately seeing that red cloth around his head like a turban, Jagadananda immediately thought, this must be the cloth given to you by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But when Sanatana Goswami said, no, it's not from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's from another sannyasi, Mukunda Saraswati gave me this cloth. And Jagadananda flew into a rage. He picked up a pot, a cooking pot, and was going to smash Sanatan with a cooking pot. You are Mahaprabhu's most important associate. No one is dearer to him than you. How could anyone tolerate you wearing another sannyasi's cloth around your head? He dropped the pot and went into the corner of the room and started crying, because he felt terrible what Sanatana Goswami had done, but he felt terrible about his response. And then Sanatana Goswami said, again, this is loving exchange in relation to Lord Chaitanya. Well said. It is clear, Jagadananda, that you are unequaled in your love for the Lord. Only from you could I have learned this lesson, for you alone have such solid faith in the Lord. My purpose in binding the cloth around my head has been realized, for as soon as you saw it, I was able to witness the manifestations of your love for the Lord. A Vaishnava should not wear a saffron-colored cloth. I will give it to someone else, for I have no further need for it. It's a celebrated pastime. So Jagadananda's love for Lord Chaitanya, this was explosive, and it was spontaneous, and he couldn't help himself because his love for Lord Chaitanya was so intense. And Sanatana Goswami loved his love for Lord Chaitanya. Unfortunately, he didn't hit him with his pot, but the peaceful nature of Sanatana Goswami is what had checked him, because he came to his senses and understood Sanatana Goswami is very dear to Lord Chaitanya. How can I hit him? Another pastime connected with Sanatana Goswami came later, because Lord Chaitanya had traveled from Jagannath Puri, headed for Vrindavan. When he headed for Vrindavan, his first journey was in the northerly direction. He went to Ramakeli, met Sanatana and Rupa Goswami, and further to Kanai Natashala, and there he returned back to Jagannath Puri with Jagadananda and the whole entourage that were with him, based upon some very wise and loving advice from Sanatana Goswami. It's not good to go to Vrindavan with a big entourage like this. Go alone, or at most with one person. So when Lord Chaitanya went to Vrindavan, it was very difficult for Jagadananda to maintain in the absence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned, later Sanatana Goswami went to visit Chaitanya Mahaprabhu following the same path that Lord Chaitanya had followed, passing through the Jharkhand forest on the way back. But he learned the details. This is Sanatana Goswami and his relationship with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He learned all the places through the forest, because there are forest-dwelling people in the Jharkhand forest, and very simple people. And so he found out where he went from place to place. He asked and inquired, and then he asked those individuals, what were the pastimes? What did Lord Chaitanya do when he came to your place? And in this way, he traveled all the way through the forest, but unfortunately, he took water from a place that was contaminated, and his body became infected with sores, open sores, like the sores that kind of have oozing, yucky stuff coming out of the sores. So Sanatana Goswami began to consider, how horrible. I'm going to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri. Nature, he'll want to embrace me. I got this yucky stuff all over my body. So maybe I should give up my body. See, and he had this idea in his mind, give up his body. So long story, and time is running out. So just the part that's involved in Jagadananda, when Lord Chaitanya checkmated him, you can't give up your body because it belongs to me. You've surrendered to me. You can't put your body under the cart of Jagadananda comes. If suicide was sufficient to go back to Godhead, we'd all do it. You can't do that. I don't permit you. And he was bound by that order. And then Sanatana Goswami didn't know what to do. So he went and asked Jagadananda, what should I do? Because they have this intimate relationship. What should I do? And Jagadananda said, stay for Rath Yatra, and then after Rath Yatra, go back to Vrindavan. And Sanatana Goswami thought that was a fantastic suggestion. So Sanatana Goswami then informed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, may I have your permission after Rath Yatra to go back to Vrindavan? And that this was a nice suggestion by Jagadananda. And Lord Chaitanya became very angry at Jagadananda. Who is this upstart? He's junior to you by age and spiritual every single way, and he's going to give you advice? He was sternly, so this happens when there's loving dealings. A loving personality may, in this case, Lord Chaitanya, sternly admonished Jagadananda. So Sanatana Goswami said, just see how affectionate you are to Jagadananda. You would never scold me. You always treat me with respect and kindness and softness because we don't have that kind of intimate relationship like you and Jagadananda have. And so Lord Chaitanya said, it's not because he's more dear to me than you. It's just I can't bear transgression of etiquette. In any case, Jagadananda had an incredible Vamya relationship, like Satyabhama with Krishna, Jagadananda with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they would always quarrel. And Lord Chaitanya would then become submissive to the quarreling Jagadananda to break his anger or stubbornness or pouting mood, and Jagadananda would win. But it was a bond of love, not something else, not something mundane. Worldly people can't understand, for sure. Worldly people can't understand because it's not that kind of a relationship. He had, like this nice example, crossing a river in single-mindedness. The river is the river of material existence. Be single-minded when you're trying to cross that river. And the single-mindedness is both feet in one boat. In the boat of the devotion to the personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu glorified Jagadananda another time when he was speaking with Ballabha, because Ballabha wanted to have Lord Chaitanya explain this and that and the other thing. And Lord Chaitanya would defer to his associates and say, if you want to hear about the holy name, ask Jagadananda and other persons who are so expert and qualified at distributing the message and the method of chanting the holy name. So Jagadananda was a preacher, although admittedly very eccentric, but spontaneous love for the name, spontaneous love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, spontaneous love for his dear associates. This is one of the examples, of the abundant examples of loving exchanges between Lord Chaitanya and his eternal associates who came to take part in his pastimes with him. And somehow Jagadananda was there from childhood right till the end, intimately associated in this most puzzling way. So, I looked at my watch and I think we're nearly out of time. We have some time if there's some discussion or topics you'd like to bring up. You can unmute yourself, give them the prompt.
Hare Krishna devotees, if anybody has any questions, you can unmute yourself and just speak. Maharaj will be able to hear.
Huh?
Maharaj, this is Anutama. I have a question, if I may.
Wow. My
Please
patience
accept
is
my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada.
Glories to Prabhupada. Thank you for joining the class and glorifying Lord Chaitanya.
Thank you for inspiring us with understanding more of Lord Chaitanya's Leela. I'm just wondering, your concluding remarks, you said that mundane people can't understand these pastimes and these moods, and that's certainly true. I'm just wondering, and I came in about 5-6 minutes late, so you might have prefaced your talk in a way that would already answer my question. If so, please forgive me. But I'm just wondering, sometimes as neophyte devotees, we're all, including myself in that category for sure. Sometimes we hear about different lila and or activities of the great acharyas or Prabhupada and we kind of, they become like the sample for us to follow. So I'm just wondering, these kind of interactions, with devotees, you could say externally, you just explained very clearly, they're very loving, but we might feel like, okay, well, I'm going to show my love in the same way by, the way I interact with devotees. I'm going to chastise them because I don't like the red hat they're wearing today because that's not what devotees. So can you just reflect upon that a little bit about, that we maybe, like it says, follow in our footsteps of the predecessors, but not necessarily imitate them. As a thought crosses my mind.
If you can lift Govardhan Hill, then you can claim to be the personality of Godhead. In other words, the imitation platform is not what we should take from this, because, yes, I did discuss this, the platform of devotional service of Jagadananda Pandit was that of spontaneous love that knew no boundaries. It didn't know social protocol. It didn't know anything. We mentioned when, as much as he had deep regard and love and affection for Swarup Damodar, who understood the heart of Jagadananda, when Swarup Damodar asked him, "Oh, you want to write about the glories of Caitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes? Very good. Write very nicely, because the whole world will benefit." And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jagadananda replied to him, "I don't know what's good for the whole world. I only know what's in my heart, and I write what's in my heart." He shut him down. and Swarup Damodar said, "He understands that I'm eccentric, so he left me alone." Now, if somebody is eccentric, some people are eccentric. I know some people that are eccentric. And, even eccentricities have their boundaries. I think we both share knowledge of certain eccentric personalities in our Hare Krishna movement, and that don't know any boundaries. And as much as we try to help those eccentric people understand, look, you're representing the Hare Krishna movement, there's boundaries, and please stay within the boundaries. And, if we should not imitate Jagadananda, spontaneous or not spontaneous. And that, spontaneous persons may have their place in certain venues, but not in the public forum. And I'll just share this with you, Anuttama Prabhu. I witnessed something like this in an exchange between Trivikram Swami and Sridhar Swami, because there was a period of time when Sridhar Swami was based in Radha Govinda Mandir, as was I, and Trivikram Swami was coming to visit. The three of us had lunch together, and the two of them were speaking, insulting each other. And I was like, excuse me, I've never heard two people speak like this. They said, "No, you don't understand. It's love. It's loving exchange." So now they understood each other. I didn't understand what they were doing. And I, to this day, don't understand, other than they just have that kind of intimacy of loving exchange where it wasn't hurtful to either party. It was part of their enjoying loving exchanges. Now, they didn't, fortunately, just go around doing that with everybody, but they had that particular kind of relationship. So if you have that particular kind of relationship with another devotee, then you can, jab them with your elbow, or, make a funny face, or do one of these or something like that. And, they understand, because you're not making fun of them. But it's not a good idea to do that on a standard basis because that's imitation and it'll be misunderstood.
Thank you.
And people will feel hurt as well. That the austerity of speech is speak in such a way people's minds are not disturbed. Good luck.
Thank you, Marsh. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This question is from Monica. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, you mentioned Vamya as the left wing of gopis. Is there a right wing or other form of gopis?
Oh, yeah. And they're very subservient, very obedient. They never talk back. Yes. It's always very submissive. That's the right wing.
She has a second question. Was there a specific significance regarding the instructions provided to Jagadananda from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu while traveling to Vrindavan?
There's details, but the essence, besides the details, is protection. No, like the protection of a mother for a child or protection of a well-wisher for another. He wanted him to be safe. Take soldiers with you, etc., etc. This is safe, and then it starts to getting rough. And the experienced person dealing with the less experienced person for the sake of protection and safety. And even when you get to Vrindavan, you offer respect to the Chobe Brahmanas, but keep a distance because you won't understand them. Prabhupada gave us instructions like that. Don't intimately mix with the Brijvasis because we won't understand. And stay with Sanatana Goswami because we know that you're, a mischievous person and he'll keep you straight. So it was protection, loving protection.
Next question is from Kari and Neil Chakravarti. Could you please talk about this process of asking for blessings before visiting a holy place or making a life change?
He wants to hear something about the place for asking blessings?
Process of asking blessings.
The process of asking blessings. Well, hopefully you and each one of us, they're guiding us, and their nearness and dearness, at least beyond where we are, nearness and dearness to Krishna and to disciplic succession, you ask submissively, just like Jagadananda was asking for permission, and he didn't go because he didn't get permission. So he didn't go, although he wanted to go. And then when he got permission, it was with some conditions. So the process is submission and not, I'm going to do it anyways, so you better say yes because I'm going to do it anyways. Or it's already done and, I bought my ticket or something. So the process can look different from case to case, but it's from the heart and seeking well wishes and benedictions to proceed in any undertaking, not only visiting Holy Dham, but any major decision. It's major decisions. Seek blessings. So the process is you go to someone who you look up to, who's guiding you. Your heart is open to them. Their wisdom is freely given. And if they say no, then you don't persist. You accept.
Next question is from Atulya. Is it correct to understand Lord Chaitanya's Shikshashtakam verses to be the prime instructions and rest of the literature written by acharyas are supporting those instructions? What would be the best way to understand these instructions?
I don't know if that would. It's it's an essence of how to chant the holy name. And, threads or essences of a life of bhakti. But there's many additional understanding. Let's just take, the teachings of Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas and other epic literatures given by the Goswamis that represent teachings of Lord Chaitanya. I don't know if you can say that all of what Rupa Goswami writes is just an expansion of those Shikshastika verses. So how can we? This is my understanding of the Shikshastika verses. In essence, it's a how-to procedure from the very beginning to the topmost stage of the highest forms of prema bhakti, what it looks like and how to get there through the chanting of the holy name. Specifically, the focus is through the chanting of the holy name.
Next question is from Srinivas Srihari. By chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra faithfully, gratefully, taking shelter of the holy name, can one come to the Swarupa state?
I would hope so. That's our faith.
Could you explain what Swarupa is, just for benefit of everyone?
Well, I invite those that don't know what the question means to read Nectar of Instruction, text number 8, to understand what Swarup means. Swarup means your spiritual identity. Your spiritual identity, not the covering or your psychophysical nature and your duties according to your psychophysical nature, but your spiritual identity, your spiritual form. Yes, Swarup. And Swarup Siddhi is achieved by furthering and developing the process of bhakti that's described there. It's a very nice, very capsule, short summary of from zero to perfection in one paragraph.
Next question is from Sucharita. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Is Shikshashtakam an equivalent of Chaturshloki the Supreme Lord gave to Sri Brahma, like being an essence?
It's similar to the previous question. The answer is no. There's certainly overlapping, but that's not the equivalent. The essence of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is in the Chaturshloki, and the essence of how to carry out the chanting of the holy name from beginning stages to perfection that's what Shikshastakam is. Now, there's certainly overlap between those two topics, but they're not merely reduced to being identical. Anyone else online here that wants to speak something? Unmute yourselves. Okay, we're finished for the Gaura Purnima class. Thank you for inviting me to join.
Thank you, Maharaj, for sharing such wonderful pastimes, very deep, very elevated. But
And don't imitate.
Yes. Thank you for inspiring us. And thank you all for joining, and wish you all a wonderful Gaura Purnima. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj, for being with us all on Gaura Purnima. Happy Gaura Purnima, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, Lee.
Thank you.
Any other
Anything in the
questions
room?
here in the room?
Okay. Prabhupada ki. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki. Gaura Premanandi.